But next up, we are welcoming back Richard Tang from Zen Internet. We're always very excited to have him join us here to give us an update following on from last year's presentation about altnets. Thanks, Richard.
Thank you very much. I'm here to give you a race update of the full Fibre Wacky Races. But before I do, I want to talk about Zen's new purpose statement, which is do right for people and planet, which we launched a bit earlier this year. Actually, the purpose of Zen hasn't changed, but based on an employee vote, we thought do right for people and planet really encompassed what we were all about as a company, and we're all about putting people and the environment first and money second. So let's get to it. Full Fibre Wacky Races. I wanted to pick up where I left off last year. I was here almost exactly 1 year ago, right at the end of May, presenting the full Fibre Wacky Races. And this was the last slide that I presented at Linx 122. And this was all about what opportunities do we see at Zen with all the stuff that's going on with the altnets and the full fibre builds. And at that point, I said, we've got two infrastructure providers, Openreach and CityFibre, and we're actively exploring the possibility of partnering with others. Now, a lot's happened in the last year in altnet world and in Zen world, and that actively exploring the possibility has developed and evolved into our strategic ambition to become the UK's altnet aggregator of choice. Where are we today? Today, we sell direct to consumers, we sell direct to businesses, and we sell into our partner channel, to channel partners and ISPs through our Fibre Hub. And if you are connected to our Fibre Hub today, you can access Openreach, you can access CityFibre. This month, we're going to start selling Freedom Fibre direct, and next month, that will be available to partners and ISPs as well. Next will come Trooli. We've been selling Trooli direct for 3 months. That's going to come in August to October. As of Friday last week, we finalised the last term of a contract with another altnet. I can't tell you who it is because we've not actually signed the contract. That's going to be signed either this evening or tomorrow, and we'll announce next week. We're already well on with the integration, again launching that August to October. There's another that we're finalising contract terms. Again, we're already on with the integration, and we expect to announce that in the coming weeks. Again, available to our partners August to October. And we're talking to most of the other altnets in the industry. Now, one question with this strategy is, well, hang on a minute, that sounds like a lot of work. What about the big consolidation? And in particular, why don't we just wait for all the altnets to consolidate and just integrate once? So here's Matthew Hare, Executive Chairman of Zoom, who said, likely to be more consolidation over the next 2 to 3 years, leading to more efficient and more profitable altnets. As an aside, I asked Matthew what his ambition was for Zoom, and he said, lots more customers, please. So on to this question, why not wait for the big consolidation to happen and interconnect once with a consolidated entity? And the answer is because in most businesses, the biggest opportunities come during periods of change. And the time to build market share in the full fibre world is right now. It's not going to be in 5 years' time when everything has settled down. Next reason is very limited competition in the areas that have not yet been overbuilt. And a great example is our partnership with Trooli in some of the Trooli areas that haven't been overbuilt by Openreach, haven't necessarily got VMO2. There's only 2 places you can buy full fibre broadband as a consumer, Trooli Retail and Zen. So in those areas, if you were connected to Zen and going through the Fibre Hub, you could reasonably expect to win a much bigger market share than if you were competing with everybody else in the industry. And the altnets, as you'll all know, are very, very keen to fill up their networks with paying customers. So if you have a business that, for example, has a local or regional focus, and you've got a great marketing idea to get loads of customers signed up to your business and then so on to their network, then they're very forthcoming with co-marketing funds. And in fact, Zen is also, we've got marketing funds as well to fund our partners and ISPs to win customers on those networks. In short, make hay while the sun shines. So what happens if and when two of Zen's altnet partners consolidate? And that undoubtedly will happen. Well, first of all, for about 6 months to a year, nothing whatsoever. As you'll have seen, joining together businesses, for example, YouFibre and CityFibre, it just takes ages to get the systems working together, to join the networks together, and then to provide a unified service. At some point, Zen will have to, one day we'll be calling into two APIs to provision and manage services, and then the next day it will all go through one API, so fine. But actually, our channel partners and ISPs won't notice any difference. What we find is the commercials from the different altnets are quite uniform. So when we sell broadband directly, if you go to our website and check availability, if you're on the Openreach network, you'll get one price. If you're on an altnet like CityFibre, Trooli, Freedom Fibre, and the others, you'll get a lower price. What we see typically is that our input price is about 20% less through the altnets than through Openreach. Typically, there's no connection charge as well, whereas Openreach charge a connection charge. So we can be much more competitive on the altnet footprints. So that's a little bit of a view into Zen. Let's have a trip down memory lane to the last 30 years of this industry. A very quick trip. Let's start off with the 1990s and the beloved US robotics courier modem. We had shelves and shelves full of these, accepting dial-up connections back in the 90s. Then we had the decade of ADSL in the 2000s. The internet really became a thing. 2010s was the decade of fibre to the cabinet. BT's silver bullet against the local loop unbundlers. And this decade is the decade of full fibre and is the last big infrastructure build in our lifetimes. And going back a few years, about 100 altnets realised that this was the last opportunity to build infrastructure, and they took the great altnet gamble, hoping to get big, get bought, be a niche rural player forever. But of course, there's the risk of getting stranded, meaning there's a risk that they're going to run out of cash or they're going to get overbuilt before they've built a sustainable business model. If I was to appraise the industry today, I'd say it's an industry under a lot of pressure. A lot of pressure from overbuild and increased competition. A lot of these altnets didn't realise that there'd be 100 competitors, not all necessarily in the same areas, but they didn't realise there'd be so many altnet competitors. And I don't think they realised that Openreach would have accelerated its build quite as quickly as it has done. There's the pressure of a long, long road to become a viable, profitable business. I don't know of any altnets today that could describe themselves as viable and profitable in terms of they can service all their debt, they can actually make a profit. EBITDA positive, there's a few that have got to EBITDA positive. And then, of course, there's the financing, servicing debt, managing cash, raising more funds. Many altnets are critically dependent on raising more funds at a time when the investors and the banks have got a lot more cautious. Here's Andy Conibere, CEO of Trooli, who said some altnets are in discussions with their banks about their levels of debt. Lenders are carefully prioritising new altnet debt to be based on very strong financial fundamentals. And of course, there's the pressure of organisational and logistical challenges, and you'll see periodically in the news altnets laying off staff, downsizing, and that comes with, of course, all sorts of pressure. One person in an altnet I won't name told me that a year in altnet world is like a dog year. So, since this is Wacky Races, let's get straight onto the race league table, 2nd of June 2025, and this is in order of ready for service premises, and right up there, miles out in the lead, Openreach, 18.8 million ready for service full fibre premises today. Zen's been a partner with Openreach since Openreach were a thing, and before that. VMO2 and nexfibre, 6.8 million altogether, of which about 4.6 million are VMO2, 2.2 million roughly are nexfibre. Next up is CityFibre, 4.3 million. So Zen partnered with CityFibre back in 2022, great partnership. Netomnia and Brisk, 2.5 million. Hyperoptic said last year they had 1.7 million, but Thinkbroadband did an analysis, and they said, well, we can only see 1.2 million. I'm not sure. Which one do you believe? Community fibre, 1.35 million. Full fibre and Zoom, 600,000. Gigaclear, 593,000. Trooli, 423,000. Zen's partnered with Trooli. F&W Networks, again, one of these, I suppose, in the minority altnets where they publish one figure, but actually when you look at what you can get, again, Thinkbroadband thinks 269k versus F&W's published figure of 410. I suspect the reality is somewhere in between those two numbers. And I thought I'd put Freedom Fibre on there since we're partnered with Freedom Fibre. They're at position 13, subject to my numbers being accurate. So that's the race league table. And when I look at that league table and everything that's going on in the industry, it still definitely feels like the Wacky Races. But I've got to say that the positions of the various racers are becoming a little bit more established this year. Here's Nathan Rundle, who's the CEO of Gigaclear, who said, industry consolidation is widely expected and speculated on, but it's fair to say that no one is quite sure of precisely what it looks like. Gigaclear now has 593,000 RFS premises, 140,000 connected customers and growing, which is clear proof of strong demand for ultra-fast fibre in rural areas. We're on track to be EBITDA positive in 2025. We want to continue to deliver the strong customer growth we've seen in the last year and continue connecting underserved communities with ultra-fast fibre broadband. So Nathan gave me this quote a couple of months ago. I actually interviewed him for my YouTube channel very recently. That interview is going out this Wednesday on the 4th of June. And in that interview, he did say that he is expecting some consolidation within the rural players. So have a listen if you're interested to hear more there. This is Graeme Oxby, the CEO of Community Fibre. Our RFS, real next day connection if you want it, is 1.35 million. Build is focused on localised infill and B2B connections. Our last publicly reported customer number was 330,000, so take-up is now 25%, with older cohorts at 45%. Ambition is profitability rather than chasing a network size number. Overall, industry seems still to be focused on my network is bigger than yours, when the only important thing is profitable revenue growth, be it direct or wholesale, or both together. So definitely feeling like the Wacky Races, but when it comes to the subject of consolidation, it's also feeling a bit like the full fibre chess game. Now, one guy who likes a game of chess and is pretty good at it as well is Jeremy Chelot of Netomnia. So Jeremy actually gave me an update just yesterday. He said as of the 1st of June, we had 2.5 million RFS, growing at 1 million a year, roundabouts, 325,000 customers, aiming to finish the year with 450,000 customers. We have clear ambitions to become the UK's largest altnet and are now clear second in size of network, and will be clear second in customers by the end of the year too. My view is that either VMO2, CityFibre or Netomnia will have to consolidate the UK market, and I believe Netomnia is in a very strong position because of the strength of our balance sheet, low leverage, our current growth on our RFS and customers, and the strength of the platform. As you know, we are techies. I still believe that by the end of the decade, there will be either a new national network, altnets led by either Netomnia or CityFibre, or VMO2 would have consolidated us. My bet is on the former. VMO2, CityFibre and Netomnia will be tested this year on their ability to raise additional cash and do transformative M&A. Let's see who delivers. Here's Nathan Vautier, CEO of Freedom Fibre, who said, consolidation is the single biggest topic, and choosing the right company to consolidate with is the difference between success and failure. Sector continues to need to consolidate. Winners and losers will be defined by that. Here's Andy Conibere again, and he says about Trooli, our ambition is commercially sensitive, but it is worth reinforcing that our owners, Vabon, are long-term investors, and unlike much of the market, we continue to build and consider ourselves well-placed and in a strong position for whatever market changes are going to happen in the near and medium-term future. I actually got a comment from the investors, Vabon, who said Vabon is a long-term investor, having invested in FTTP since 2009 to develop its FTTP platform in France, covering 14 million RFS today, and in Spain, covering 5 million RFS. Vabon believes size is an important element in the UK market, and Vabon will grow our UK platform organically while considering opportunistically inorganic growth. Vabon's ultimate ambition is clear. However, it's sensitive, so we're not telling you, Richard Tang, go away. Anyway, on the subject of consolidation, 8 Advisory published this report a couple of months ago, UK Fibre Financing, Our Capital Structures Sustainable? And in there is this chart, which is really interesting. It's a chart of capital efficiency, and what that means is the total capital deployed, debt plus equity, over the number of premises passed. And what it shows is different altnets have very different build costs in terms of the amount of capital they need. Now, some of those you can understand, because Gigaclear, they're building to, in some cases, deep rural areas, hundreds of meters apart. So yeah, the build costs are bound to be bigger. So down at the bottom, you can see, this is rural. But then amongst the others, it's not so clear why there is a difference. PIA is definitely a factor. So Netomnia has pursued a strategy that we will only build where there's PIA. We don't want that cost of having to dig up the streets. Unlike, for example, CityFibre, who have a balance between digging up the streets and using PIA. Now, the point of this, though, is imagine you're in Netomnia's shoes and you're looking to consolidate or acquire other altnets. So, you've spent £403 a premise to build your network, and you've got potential acquisition targets that might have spent twice that amount or more, who might think, well, as a business, we're worth the equivalent of £800 a premise or £900 or £1,000. And Jeremy's sitting there, well, I can build that network for half the price, but it will take me a bit of time. So I think this is definitely a factor that has slowed down the M&A, is that companies don't necessarily gel together. Let's go to the top 3, starting with CityFibre at number 3, reverse order, of course. So 4.3 million RFS, growing at 1 million a year roundabout. over 550,000 consumer customers on FTTP, over 10,000 business and public sector and mobile sites connected with high-value Ethernet and dark fibre services. And CityFibre claims to be the only challenger with enterprise revenues. And CityFibre's ambition is to be the UK's third national network and the largest wholesale challenger to Openreach, the supplier of choice to well over 8 million premises, offering the best products, services and pricing over the nation's finest full fibre network. And here's Greg Mesch, CEO, who said, the market will consolidate over the next 2 years and CityFibre will emerge as the third national network. This is because we are not like any other altnet. We're twice the size of our nearest altnet challenger. We're EBITDA profitable. We have very dense, contiguous local network footprints, not thin and fragmented like many other altnets. We're the only network with a mature wholesale channel with Sky Broadband on board. ISPs now have about 50% broadband market share. Consumer ISPs outperform by more than a factor of 2 their national market share on CityFibre versus Openreach. Even those altnets with designs on a wholesale model do not recognise the extent to which subscale reach and the prospect of lengthy technical integration limits the interest of the large ISPs. We've got over £865 million in BDUK contracts underpinning rollout to 1.3 million premises. We must remember that for sustainable infrastructure competition to emerge, it must be at the expense of Openreach's market share. This is in the interest of consumers, businesses, and the wider UK economy. Thank you, Greg. Let's move on to position 2, VMO2 nexfibre. These are sibling companies, and just to give you a recap, VMO2 have built out their cable network since the big aggregation in the 90s, 16.2 million premises in urban areas, and then nexfibre strategy is to build a ring around those urban areas in semi-urban to semi-rural areas, 5 to 7 million premises was their goal in terms of build. Rajiv Datta gave me this quote a couple of months ago. nexfibre passed more than 2 million premises at the end of 2024, and our build programme continues to deliver. We believe we're the second largest alternative fibre platform, yet regardless of relative position on RFS premises month on month, the real focus should be on EBITDA performance to facilitate the servicing of the extensive debts held by many altnets. This is a symptom of the current market structure and demonstrates the need for consolidation into a sustainable model to drive meaningful competition to the incumbent. This year will see more pressure on debt financing, which is necessary before consolidation can progress at any significant level. At an infrastructure level, the economics simply do not allow for 3 full-scale national networks to flourish, and that is key for future investment, growth, and innovation in the sector. nexfibre is here for the long term, and we see ourselves as the natural home for quality fibre assets and their investors looking for a solution to their challenges. Now, since Rajiv gave me that quote, there was something in the news last month where nexfibre scaled back their build from 5 to 7 million to 2.5 million by the end of 2025, and the plans that VMO2 had to spin off a netco, which would be a wholesale entity, were put on ice. Now, this morning, Rajiv gave me an update on that news, and he said, the 2025 build plan is being optimised to reflect the fact that it doesn't make much sense to overbuild other alternative network infrastructure. We believe that the best long-term solution would be for us to utilise our financial firepower to drive consolidation in this very fragmented market. Nothing has changed in terms of our ambition to create a national-scale wholesale platform. We may just get there in a different way. So that is VMO2 nexfibre. Interesting things going on there. Let's move on to pole position number 1, 18.8 million RFS. Amazing. 33 million total occupied premises, B2C and B2B. That's what Openreach sees in the UK excluding things like smart bus shelters and things. So they've got about 57% coverage today of the entire premises of the UK, and building about 1.2 million RFS a quarter, which is amazing. 400,000 every month. It's the quickest build anywhere in Europe. They've got 15,000 people focused on building. They're building everywhere, and coverage by country is interesting. Particularly in Northern Ireland, which is over 90% now. This is Openreach saying, we've done it in Northern Ireland, actually we're going to go further in Northern Ireland, and that's what we're going to do in England, Scotland and Wales, where the percentage of 50% England, 50% Scotland, 67% Wales at the moment. And more than 6.5 million connected customers. So despite the speed of their build, they've got about 36% market penetration now. Older cohorts are seeing over 50% penetration. Average build cost is about £280 a premise, so they're spending about 1.2 billion a year on build. And BT Group as a total invested 4.9 billion last year. So of the FTSE companies, BT is making the biggest investment into UK infrastructure of all the FTSE companies. Here is Clive Selley, CEO of Openreach. We're seeing a change in build by the altnets, with more of the build being concentrated in fewer altnets. CityFibre Holdings, VMO2 nexfibre, and Netomnia Brisk are now the main builders, with others having slowed down, pivoting from build to provision. There's talk of consolidation, but not huge evidence of it happening. And in fact, they told me that they're seeing about 3/4 of the build at the moment is those three, and there's about 1/4 is everybody else. I did ask Clive, how do you feel about losing market share? And he said, I'm not enjoying it, but we lose very little from FTTP areas. Losses are mainly from non-FTTP areas, so our strategy is to build as fast as we can to fill in those areas. Now, I interviewed Allison Kirkby a few weeks ago. That interview went live last week on my YouTube channel. And the first question I asked Allison was, what are your highlights and lowlights for your first year as BT Group's chief executive? Highlights, people are amazing. Scale of what we're trying to do. This is the UK's single biggest infrastructure project at the moment, and we're doing it ahead of time, ahead of cost. And it really is a shining light for the industry and for Europe, how to really build a fibre platform of the future. Still progressing on our modernisation and transformation, and we've actually stepped that up and accelerated that a bit in this past year. In terms of lowlights for Allison, the UK is a very competitive market. It's become even more competitive, and because we've not yet modernised and transformed, we're not moving at the speed we need to in some areas. So we probably lost a little bit too many customers this last year, whether it be on the Openreach platform or in some of our retail businesses, because they're under pressure from competition. We still have too much legacy, tech products, services that just in general slow us down. A couple of other points of interest from that interview that I picked out were, for this presentation, Openreach is on a journey from being the incumbent to being a competing player in a free market. So Allison recognised that, and I guess acknowledged that inevitably that means Openreach's market share is going to shrink, but she said it is going to become more profitable because it's going to have a new and more efficient asset that will deliver a better customer experience and will last for the next 40 to 50 years, maybe even longer. AI, I thought that was an interesting little snippet. So already delivering benefit within BT. Developer productivity up 30 to 40% is the claim. And the AI chatbot, Amy, is achieving an NPS 20 points above that of humans. Although she did acknowledge it was for a different set of tasks, so not a like-for-like comparison. And then the other interesting thing was I asked her about partnerships because a few of the altnets have asked me, and we've talked about, what's the point of Openreach building when there's already a network there? And she said, although acquisitions and partnerships are not on the radar right now, they're absolutely something BT Group would consider in the future, particularly for fibre builds beyond Openreach's 30 million target by the end of the decade, and also looking for retail acquisition targets. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And I want to finish off in terms of this little snippet again on consolidation. So this was at Connected North in April with Guy Miller, CEO of MS3. Sean Royce is the CEO of Quickline Communications. And Sean had an interesting observation on consolidation. He said he's clearly going to be consolidation in some shape or form. It might have taken a little bit longer than others thought. It will speed up, is his view. I think there's two overhangs right now. The CityFibre refinancing that everyone's waiting for. There's Gigaclear to a certain extent. And then there's VMO to Netco split and how that was all going to pan out. There are 2 or 3 big shadows that we need to get through, I think. And then once all that's happened, I suspect we'll see the activity accelerate. And then Guy Miller said, yes, totally agree. Until those 3 things happen, there's uncertainty in the market. And once they're done, everyone knows where they are. And anyone moving before that is at high risk. He then went on to say, if we all consolidated tomorrow, you'd have one amazing business that would take on and smash Openreach and Virgin. Openreach is laughing when it looks at 50 or 60 altnets who each run 50 or 60 help desks, 50 or 60 backhaul networks, and 50 or 60 NOCs. If we can't sort it out quickly through consolidation, we have to take some steps on collaboration to make it quicker. So there in about 30 minutes is a whistle-stop tour, I guess my own perspective on the full fibre Wacky Races as of June 2025, or the full fibre chess game, however you want to look at it. A couple of closing thoughts. So 2025 is the Zen Internet's 30th birthday. So we started in 1995. And in 30 years in the industry, this is the best infrastructure competition that I've ever seen. And I think that's great for our industry. It's great for free market competition, so it's great for the UK as a whole. There's already a lot of change. There's going to be a lot more change between now and the end of the decade, and that is creating a fantastic window of opportunity for all of us in this room as industry players. So my message to everyone here is the world is your full fibre oyster. Let's make the most of it. And of course, let's enjoy the journey. Thank you very much. And I think we've got like 5 minutes if anyone's got any questions.
Thank you for that. That's excellent. My name's Mark from Epsilon. I just went through, as a consumer, buying fibre to the home recently. Do you know what the percentage is of people that have access to that and are or are not taking it up? And I'll use an example for my house. I couldn't find anywhere that said I could get it. If you check Ofcom, nope. I just ran tests for all of them except for Openreach that said it's not available, yet for me it's available. Finally I did check Openreach and I could get it, so I had it installed a month ago. But otherwise, most people are going to go to Ofcom, right? So 2 questions, I guess. What is the uptake if it's available? And secondly, why isn't Ofcom up to date?
Right. Well, you're putting me on the spot now. So,
Sorry.
Fibre penetration in the UK, I think it's something, is it about 55%? Anyone here with an internet connection? It's over half of the UK has got fibre, something like that, 55%.
No, but what's the uptake?
But then, of the people that can get fibre, how many have got fibre? I've got the stat, I've just not got it in my head.
It's about 30%, roughly.
Cheers, Graeme.
Give or take.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I mean,
It changes, though, if you include Virgin Media, who've got ultra-fast capability. If you add them, it's even higher because you'd argue they've already got 1 gig products. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're seeing really good, at Zen, we're seeing really good take-up of full fibre, but for a lot of customers, there is massive inertia. So it's like, yeah, my FTTC is working fine. I can stream my 4K. Why do I need fibre? And of course, once you get it, it's like, oh, no, this is really good. Actually, I'm glad I got this. It's a lot more reliable, of course. One interesting stat is from Openreach. They see 3 times more reliability from their fibre network, from their copper network, and the copper network's getting worse because, you know, Clive, when I met Clive last, he was saying a lot of this kit is so old and out of date, we can't, you know, it's falling to bits and we can't get spares. We have to turn it off.
Openreach might do better if they let people know they could get it.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, it's a criticism of the ISPs as well, because, you know, when we're selling full fibre, it's up to the ISPs like Zen and all the big players as well to shout from the rooftop, you can get full fibre. And I mean, we are spending on a tiny scale what we can to shout out that message, and so are the big players. I think we got a question over.
Richard, sorry, my question, Richard. On your slide, you missed out something really important.
Oh, go on.
Grain fibre.
Graeme, yeah, they were on the 8 advisory thing, weren't
You
they?
kind of missed something out that's super important. They haven't used PIA anywhere.
Okay.
Yeah, they're the 3rd least expensive homes per passed on your chart, right? And given, if you think, so fast forward beyond consolidation, if everybody realizes what their assets are really worth and this dance happens and it's 3 or 4 players, what do you think happens at the end of that game? Here's my take. There's a massive price war. And those that are at that end of the spectrum are going to win. So you're, you know, being really clear about how much you've spent and what you're going to have to pay back versus cost to operate, which no one's really got a view of yet. Someone like Graeme, who haven't used any PIA and don't have any PIA charges or anything that the others will have, are in a pretty strong position, I would predict. Same with Virgin, given they've already got their own infrastructure as well.
Yes, so it's an interesting discussion about should you put the cables overhead or should you dig? Digging is more expensive. But talking to Tom Rigg, the CEO of Barn, he's like, almost all our infrastructure is underground because these villages are exposed, and when you get a storm, it blows all the overhead cables down. But if you're underground, it's much better. But then it's more expensive to do that. So, you know, how has Graeme done so well not using PAA? I mean, they must have a very efficient model. Maybe they've done more overhead. I think to your second question about how's it all going to play out, rather than being a price war, I think we'll see more of actually what we've seen today and what we've seen for a number of years is that the big networks attract new customers with very attractive special offers, and then when they get mid-contract or out of contract, they hike their prices because actually what they're offering is not enough to sustain the business model. And if you look at what a lot of the altnets are charging for their broadband today, I'm very dubious that would ever pay the bills, the ones with vertically integrated ISPs. So I think we'll continue to see that. I mean, there's one ISP that I'm thinking of now that signs you up on a very attractive sub £30 price, and when you go out of contract to list price, it's nearly triple. Okay, and of course that's in the small print. That's in the T's and C's. So I think we'll see that because of the build costs. So I think we'll just see more of the same. But yeah, the reality is there's a lot of debt and a lot of equity to pay back. And if you look at the P&Ls and balance sheets of some of the altnets, what they're bringing in revenue isn't even covering the debt repayments, never mind paying back the capital or making a profit. So yeah, interesting times for sure.
Shout out to Trooli, who installed at my house. And they did a great,
Oh, excellent.
did a great job.
Yeah, we love Trooli, definitely. As,
One of the comments you made from the interviews and things was that I can build that network for half that.
yes, yeah.
And a lot of that, to me, as a non-altnet-y person, appears to be posturing about who's got the biggest digger. Surely the value of a network is in terms of the penetration, the reach to subscribers, the people in the area that can get the service and do get the service.
Yeah.
Does the underlying network of a small altnet genuinely have a value? What is it they're financing this debt against? Is it manhole covers that can be resold for scrap metal? Is this number of houses that are on a network and not on another network, so there's no overbuild? What drives people lending money to an altnet?
So the first thing is exclusivity. So if you've got an altnet that has a captive audience because Openreach hasn't yet overbuilt, or, for example, in the case of FibreNest with Persimmon Homes, it's completely exclusive. You build a new housing estate, that's the only one you can get. Then there's definite value there. But just having the potential to connect customers isn't enough. So that's some of the value, and that was that chart from 8 Advisory. But then another part of the is, well, how much of the network needs to be filled up to make our business model work? And Gigaclear in the early days got they'd build into a new village, they'd be the only show in town. It would cost them back then about £1,000 per premise to build, and they got about a 1 in 3 take up. So they were spending 3,000 to get a customer, but then the idea that customer would then be a customer for the next 15, 20 years and would pay back the investment. Ultimately, they need paying customers on the network. Now, how much of the network do they need? According to Jeremy from Netomnia, he can make his business model fly with 14% of his network filled up because his build cost is so low. But as the build cost goes up, when I've spoken to others, typically they need about a third of their network, sort of 30 to 40%, with paying customers. And of course, when you get overbuilt by Openreach, and a lot of the ones that I've talked about today have quite a significant chunk of their network now overbuilt by Openreach, then getting to that 30 to 40% is more difficult. And so, yeah. Are we doing for time?
Any other questions?
When it comes to acquisitions and integration and things, do you think there's going to become a challenge with different build techniques? Some of the old fibre players are still GPON. A lot of people want to be XGS-PON. You've got 32 to 1, 64 to 100, even 128 to 1 split ratios on the network. Some have got a lot bigger stretch from end customers to OLTs. Some of the niche players are active Ethernet rather than PON. Is there going to get to a point where actually the cost of trying to operate all these networks that you potentially could acquire and integrate becomes quite high, and therefore you end up saying, well, maybe the value of the asset is the fibre, and I'm going to have to rebuild some of the stuff to make it look like one unified network?
Yeah, yes. The short answer is yes. I think most of the networks out there are XGS-PON. There is some GPON out there. There's some point-to-point out there as well, and it's problematic because that does need upgrading at some point. The other thing that I think what we're seeing is an even bigger challenge is the system stacks. So a lot of these altnets are quite new. So when we look at what systems they've got, their OSS, their BSS systems, you sort of imagine this thing that's super slick, and in some cases it's non-existent. It's done with spreadsheets and sticky notes, and they can send the bills out sometimes, but sometimes not much more than that. So that's very problematic in terms of altnets getting up to the point where they've got a slick set of systems. Obviously, with what we're doing with the Fibre Hub, we're working with altnets and we're saying we want a a mature wholesale service. But typically what we're saying is we will help you build a mature wholesale service because we acknowledge that you've just not got one now and we're your first national scale wholesale customer. So we're sort of going into it with that view. But that is holding some of the altnets back because they just haven't got the system stack, or they've got systems that have been implemented. And I mean, you'll all know, whatever company you're in, some of your systems are okay, and some of them, it's like, well, that all was implemented 10, 15 years ago. It's on old tech. It doesn't quite do what you want it to do. So look, the altnets have got all that in spades. But that's just part of the fun, isn't it, I suppose? If fun's the right word, I'm not sure.
Yeah, great update, Richard. Just a question. Are we going to see a chapter 2 to your presentation for the aggregator side? Is there going to be a wacky races for aggregators?
Oh, a wacky races for aggregators. Well, for sure. There should be, actually, because, I mean, we've got this big ambition. All Points Fibre, they've got an ambition to aggregate altnets as well. They've just launched their Aquila platform. PXC are pretty keen to aggregate altnets as well. So I take that as a good sign that it's a good idea. It's not just us, and we've got some healthy competition, so bring it on.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Richard.
Okay, cheers.